Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. We're at GearFest 2017. We have a special guest here in the video studio. This is Rhonda Smith. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me, Mitch.
Thanks for stopping in.
What a pleasure. What a pleasure. Having a ball.
Good, good.
Yeah.
You're enjoying the
Absolutely.
the time here?
Enjoying the crowds, all the instruments, all the stuff you have here. You have some great vendors. It's a wonderful moment.
Great. Well, we're so glad you're here. You just finished your workshop.
I did, and it was a lot of fun.
You and Paul Smith.
With Paul Reed Smith, always. It's nothing but a gas and a ball with great instruments and a lot of back and forth. Love him to death.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. So you, I was interested to see that you attended McGill University for jazz performance.
I did. When I was going to Marianapolis College, which is like what's a junior college? Because in Canada they go a little bit longer. The years are a little bit different.
Okay.
In the United, I am Canadian, so I believe that in the U.S. they go straight from high school into university.
You can go either way. You could choose to go to a junior college or straight into.
Usually in Canada they go to junior college. So when I was in junior college as a jazz major, I actually did a lot of programs at McGill when I was young. In the summertime too, I did a lot of stuff. So I had a great time there. My family has history there. My brother went there also, teaches there, had taught there for a while. So it was a really great school.
All right, that's great.
Yeah.
So how do you feel having that formal education, if you will, has impacted the development of your career?
I think it most definitely had a lot of influence on my earlier career, especially for discipline, for practice. All of those scales, all of those things, the harmony, the theory, all of that's something that I always use. And especially just the discipline. The discipline, I think sometimes there's a different discipline with classical players and with jazz players than there maybe was pop. And there's been more pop programs, I think, and more commercial programs that have come recently now to universities. But when I was starting, there wasn't that. You had to be a jazz major or you had to do classical, and that was it. There wasn't a choice in between. If you wanted to do anything else, it was on your own time, basically.
Right.
So we learned pop music and all those other things and how to slap and how to do everything else on my own time. But the discipline came from doing classical in high school, learning scales, doing all of those things, and just studying with teachers and doing all of that. So yes, it's always something that I do, and it's something that I teach myself to my students also. Right.
Yeah. So it's interesting I see two parallels in your career looking back over it. The first of which that I'd like to ask you about is you were with Prince for 10 years. And
probably it's been about 13. I started with him in 1996.
Wow.
You know, we had some mutual separations, let's call it, which was good during that time. But yeah, the last time we played together was probably 2009 when I did the last project with him, and then from then I moved on and he did some other things then.
Right.
So that was about a span of 13 years.
That's a good span.
Yeah.
And then you're currently with Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
So working with those two major artists, I'm curious how the challenges and the benefits of working with both of those two artists.
Well, I think number one benefit is as a string player, to be able to hear the marvels of these guys, and you know, to be able to be around them long enough is the great thing. You know, you don't want to get fired in a week or a year.
Right.
You want to be around long enough that they appreciate what you do, but also that you can intake this feel and the strength and the musicality that they have, because I think it's the same thing no matter who you're around for that amount of time. Their vibe and the way that they play and they just start to permeate in you, and that I love. I learned a lot of things from Prince. I learned a lot of things from Jeff Beck. You know?
Sure.
And a lot of those things, like Jeff has never been to me the type of person who would just sit down and say, hey, you know, I want to show you this, or look at what I'm doing here. It's not even really about that, but it's just about repetition. It's just about vibe and soul, and it's about feel. Number one for me, it's about feel. I learned a lot of feel from him, just listening to him, because that's just him.
Right.
You know?
Right.
The same with Prince. Prince was, and it still pains me so much to say was. Prince was such an amazing musician, and he felt everything that he did, and that's why he was able to play so many instruments so well. You know, and maybe technique on one particular thing might not have been, you know, the quintessential thing about it, but that didn't really matter. It was all about the feel and what he was trying to say, and it was believable, and it came through no matter what instrument he was playing. So that was really that was major. A lot of things to learn from these guys because they're top of their game.
Right.
You know.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What a wonderful opportunity to work with one, let alone two, is just.
Well, here's the
fantastic.
thing, and two absolutely top of the game guitar players. You know, both absolutely amazing, apples and oranges. Though you know, two completely different guys.
Right.
But both absolutely innovators and amazing at what they do, and would still, both of them are still, he would still be out there now. I
Sure.
mean, Jeff is just incredible.
Right.
You know.
Right. The other parallel I was interested to see and wanted to ask you about is, it as far as other artists go, you have credits with like Chaka Khan and Beyonce and George Clinton, but also with Kirk Whalum and Lee Ritenour and Patrice Rushen. So the kind of funk, pop, and then the more jazz side of things.
Yeah.
What's the connection between those, and what are, again, the challenges of moving between those two?
Well, again, you know, I used to play a lot more fusion-y stuff when I was younger. I used to play a lot of that, and it's funny, I think when I got with Prince, I think a lot of people who didn't know me, because I came from Canada, a lot of people just assumed that that's just the style of music that I played, and I didn't really do anything else, even though I started in different genres. So I kind of don't discriminate. I like to play a lot of music, and I think it's good for me to do that, as long as it's good. So I try to get whatever I can, and I love playing with Patrice Rushen too, who was really the caveat for me to meet a lot of those people like Kirk Whalum. A lot of those things were her projects. You know, Lee Ritenour, again, are a lot of friends of Patrice, and Patrice is an amazing player, a great friend of mine, and I love playing with her and Ndugu, and anytime I can. I love fusion. I love jazz. I love to go to the Cotton Club or go to Japan and play at the Blue Note for 5 days with a group. I just love that vibe. I grew up with that. My mother loved jazz. My family always loved to play jazz. I grew up in Montreal. We had some fantastic jazz clubs in Montreal and fusion. You know, I always say this story to people. UZEB was one of the most popular bands when I was growing up in Montreal. A lot of people go, "Who's UZEB?" I look at them like the RCA dog. What's wrong with you? You know, do you know who Alan Caron is? I mean, I'm going to slap you, you know. But the thing about where we lived, it was so great because it was encouraged. They encouraged original music. You know, like UZEB was an original band, and people went out to see them. They had places they could play. People loved to hear jazz. So that kind of environment for me when I was really starting out was really great to hear.
Right.
So I was used to hearing that. And still to this day, I just love to go to a jazz club myself and have a glass of wine and watch somebody really great, like go watch Christian McBride just tear it up, or see Chick Corea or something. So that's always going to be in me, just as a lover and a connoisseur of that type of music. And to be able to play it also is beautiful. But I just love the story of that, and I love just being in the moment of. That's why, like I brought up, to go to the Blue Note or to play at the Cotton Club. I love that vibe. I don't love the jet lag.
Of course.
It takes me a couple of days.
Right.
But I just love any kind of style. But really, I love you know, acoustic, piano, whether it's a fretless bass or a stand-up or something mellow. I love ballads. I love that kind of soft stuff too. I really do. It's something that's always been in my heart.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Speaking to some of the other bass players that I've interviewed over the years, one of the things that's come up is the balance as a bass player of foundation and harmony and melody, and balancing that as a single player within an ensemble.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's probably the biggest challenge for a lot of people. I came from the school in later years when I was playing with Prince, when it's really about joy and repetition. You know, especially for the bass. There were many moments, and one of my favorite tours with him was when we did Musicology. And when we did One Night Alone, which is based on a record that was the Rainbow Children, a lot of the times my role in that band, and he would tell me, you know, play the same 4 notes over and over and over and over again. Don't change, because I want you to be a pole, and then we want to have everyone else pivoting and flying all over the place on top of it, but you don't move. There's a value in that. There's a value in the foundation. And there's also a value in, I think, for me, respecting the music. I always teach students this too. I think that it's really important when you first learn things. I tell them, put down your instrument when you're listening to something, because you can't You can't play and listen to something at the same time. You have to intake it first. And the real important lesson, I think, in music is to understand somebody's feel first, especially when I was starting, and take that feel and let it, get permeated in you so that you understand it, and then you're able to do it, and you grow with all of those feels that you have. So it's all lessons, and I think the number one thing is listening to, when you're playing as a bass player. You have to, and for everyone else, you have to listen to other people in order to do that. But what we used to always say with Prince, and what he used to say, is if we had, let's say hypothetically, 5 people in the band, there was really 6, because one was called space and silence, because there has to be room for everything, especially in funk music. You can't just be playing all over the place. So bass is a special role. It really does depend on the type of music that you do, but sometimes I've found that simplicity has gotten me a lot further than playing a lot of notes or gobble bass or just being all over the place.
Right.
And there's a joy. I hope everyone else gets it. I think they do, but I love it in just, it can just be one note, but it just depends on where that note's placed.
Right.
And the attitude with how that note's played. If you can get somebody to really feel what you're saying in the bottom. And I think it's important. And again, you talk about foundation. If something isn't built strongly, it's not going to last. And the bass is a foundational instrument, and I think that should be the number one role of it, regardless of what style of music that you're in or what you're doing.
Right. The other aspect of that foundation is, of course, the drums and the partnership between the bass and the drums. What do you look for in a drummer?
I look for a drummer, first of all, tempo is number one, always for me. That's always been a little bit of a a pet peeve of mine when I was younger. I don't run into it a lot often, which is great anymore. But somebody like we call a Russian dragon. Somebody that's Russian and dragon all the time. That's not a good thing. So I don't like that, because I kind of think I have pretty good tempo. So it bothers me if something's going up or going down, because it kind of interrupts my vibe a little bit. And I can't concentrate on what I'm doing. Then I'm constantly like going, what, because it's all about feel. So that's the number one thing for me, tempo. And I think probably the number one thing, the second thing after that would just be somebody who doesn't listen, even if they're a great player. Because I think it's hard to play with somebody who doesn't listen. You can still play with them, but it's so much easier if we're listening. And I think that's a mutual respect. And unfortunately, I don't think everybody can always get respect from everybody that they play with. It's like anything in life. You're going to run into people who just don't respect you sometimes, or for whatever reason want to dominate. So, and that's where sometimes, okay, I have to take the back seat. And sometimes that's okay.
Right.
Sometimes it's not.
So you mentioned tempo, and of course groove is an aspect of all this as well. Is that something you can learn, something you can work on and develop?
Absolutely.
Yeah? And how do you do that?
I think you need to listen to a lot of things. You need to listen to a lot of music. Again, I think that I learned groove. And I think that I learned groove a little bit later in life. When I was growing up in Canada, I started doing rock. That's what I really started doing when I was way young, because that's what was on the radio and that's what was playing. There was not a lot of R&B. There were not a lot of black music stations, and it was not really a great country that promoted groove music per se. You'd probably hear country more, or jazz or something of that nature. So that was something that I got later. I had to learn later. Slap techniques, things that I did with my thumb and my fingers. I had to learn that later. I actually, quite later in life was when I got Larry Graham stuff and who else? I mean, Brothers Johnson, Louis Johnson, Marcus Miller, just all kinds of stuff. But stuff that's been done forever that everyone else knew.
Sure.
But I was a little slow to the game because of the environment. It's a little bit different now, but I learned it. But the same thing, I think you have to listen to it a lot. You have to listen to it and you have to love it. I remember listening to stuff, it's like they say when you study. The best time, I wasn't a great studier in school, but they say that if you study something before you go to bed, or you read something before you go to bed, you're more apt to remember it and have it just right there for the morning. Let's say you have a test or something.
Sure.
I think sometimes the same thing with music. I find myself sometimes if I listen to something before I go to sleep or something in the evening, when I wake up the next day it's still in my head. And that's important too, especially for the groove part of it. And I still get that now. It still happens a lot of the time. Sometimes I wish I could get something out of my head,
Right.
you know. But I think listening is a huge, huge part of groove. I mean, that's the first place you got to go. You got to hear it, but you got to hear it right first before you can imitate it, right? How can you imitate what you don't hear?
Right.
So.
Right. Awesome. So we mentioned that you'd done a workshop with Paul Reed Smith.
Yeah.
What drew you to that company? What's the connection there?
Well, the connection there is he got a bass and I got to play one of their basses, one of Gary Granger's bass.
Sure.
Private stock. That was Gary's bass, because I don't think they had a lot of private stocks that were just hanging around at that time, because a lot of those get custom made. And I fell in love with the bass. And like I always say, you never give a woman something that you don't want to get back, because guess what? He never got it back. So I found a way, thank God. I schemed, and oh my God, my life is over. I need this bass. It was just one of those connections that I had with this piece of wood that was just like, wow. Because I have a lot of basses, but this one had a different sound, a different character, and it just woke me up. And I just refused to not have it. I didn't know what I had to do. I didn't want them necessarily to make me another one. They gave me some other ones to try, but it wasn't the same as this one. This one had a spirit. It had a different thing going on with it that I just thoroughly connected with. So needless to say, Gary never got the bass back.
Right.
I'm very grateful to Gary for letting me have it, because it's still really my main instrument. It has been for a long time. But that's how it started. It's about 5 years ago they put that bass in my hands, and from there I was like, I gotta have it. It just lit a fire under me for sound-wise, and it just had a lot of potential. I love 24 frets. It had 24 frets. The workmanship on it is amazing, and the sound is amazing, and it was my new glove. So that's where it started, and it's just been a really, really great connection. They are a really great family, and I really like Paul. I love Bev. I love everybody there, and it's been a great 5 years. And I go out of my way, whatever I can do to help them, because I believe in what they're doing. A lot of people still, for whatever reason, don't know that they make basses, which I'm like, what's wrong with you? But I mean, that's not shameful, because they make such a great guitar.
Right.
Everybody just goes, well, they're such a great guitar company, and they are. But their basses are just amazing. So that's where it started, and I got a real love relationship with all of them. So, I mean, I just go out of my way, whatever I can do to promote anything that they need. I'll go to China.
You'll come to Fort Wayne.
Yeah, I'll come to Fort Wayne.
That's great. They're a great company and great instruments, like you say. So that's wonderful. So when I have a great artist like yourself here, and someone who's worked with so many great artists in their career, I have to ask the same question, and that is, what makes a great artist?
Well, a lot of things make a great artist, but apparently a great catalog makes a great artist, Great records, definitely. And I was very lucky to work with some amazingly prolific writers like Prince, who has an incredible back catalog and a whole story. Same with Jeff, has an amazing backstory. I bring these guys up because I think I have worked with a lot of people, but I feel very lucky to be able to have longevity with people. I think there's a difference sometimes when you work with a lot of people, which is great, but it's also great to work with a few people for a long time that are great, because I learn a lot from them at that time too. So I put a lot of value in my relationships that I have with the artists, with the great artists that I work with, because I think that's part of the story too. Right. But artist is a hard word. They can be tough, they can be demanding, they can be perfectionists in a world where it doesn't exist. I mean, what do? You just try to do your best, and you got to get along with people. That's number one. It's like a family. You can't be
Right.
you got to be nice to people, and people have to like you, number one. Then they got to like what you play. Because you can mold people into playing, what you need almost in certain styles of music. These guys are not the easiest, guys to play with, but it's not like, it's not like Chick Corea or something where it's definitely demanding. I mean, not that these guys are not demanding. It is.
Sure.
It's just in a different way.
Right.
And that sounds funny for me to even say, because it's like I'm not giving respect to that type of music, and that's not what I'm saying at all. But That's a hard one.
Yeah.
That's a broad one.
So that's why I have to ask it.
Yeah, I know you did. I failed profusely.
No, it was marvelous. It was great. It was great. So great to have you here.
Well,
We're
thank
happy
you. It's
that you
been
took some
wonderful,
time
and
to
the
sit down
weather's
with us.
been great.
It
I
is
came
a-
out of California. It's like burning. It's
Yeah.
scorching in
Yeah, we
California,
did have
so
a
it's been really
beautiful
nice. It's a beautiful day today too.
Wonderful, yeah.
Really nice.
So we're just here with 15,000 of our best friends. Great to see you.
Thanks for
so
having
much.
me.
You
Absolutely
bet.
having a great time. Thank you.
And thank you for joining me here at GearFest 2017. I'm Mitch Gallagher.